Live stream has commenced.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting for everyone to come online, and we will be starting momentarily. I think we have quorum with Fareed and Lawrence and Carrie. I'll have to count on you because I think Jim's not online yet.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We're small but mighty, and we've got a great agenda.
We have
So-
the agenda to prove it.
Exactly. Well, maybe I will get started and just welcome everyone to the meeting. My name's Linda Jackson, and I have the real pleasure of being the chair of the Quality Tenant Engagement Committee of the Board of Toronto Seniors Community Housing. And this is our last meeting of the year. It's been a jam-packed year, and just as we get started, I would just like to actually thank all of our staff and board members and committee members for this committee for a year of well done's. We've accomplished a lot. We've got a lot more to accomplish in the year to come, and I think our agenda actually speaks to that. It's a rich agenda for December 19th. So I look forward to actually reviewing a number of items that I think will launch us very well into the new year with some substantive reports and some great work already underway and some goals ahead of us. So I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and others agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements include the One Dish with One Spoon Wombat Belt Covenant and are agreements to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into the covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are mindful of broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We would also like to acknowledge those who came here forcefully, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we also honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. And I hope as we go into the new year that these land acknowledgements are more than words on paper. I commit to actually challenging our staff and our board to look at the barriers, the structural barriers that actually create issues for our tenants and for those that are living in our buildings. So let's make sure that it's not just actually reading words on paper, and that we also commit to actually having a real understanding of who lives in our buildings and how we can address some of those structural racist barriers that occur. We're going to move on to the approval of the meeting agenda, hoping everyone has had a chance to take a look at it. Like I said, I think we have a robust agenda, and this would not be possible without a lot of people who are on the line today and in the Hollywood squares, as I like to call them, that we'll be calling on today to actually give us an update of work well done. And from many tenants, I think the thing that actually makes me most encouraged about our work to date is actually the amount of tenants that have actually contributed. What I don't have is, do we have deputants today that if people can, I'm just going to look for the staff as we go through the agenda, if you could just let me know where we have deputants. Yeah, Grant.
Hi, Linda, so through the chair, yes, we have one deputant on two items. Bill Lohman will be deputing on items 12 and 13.
Okay, thank you. And that's it?
That's it.
Okay, so just to make sure that I like to get to the deputants before we get into the meat of the item, because it usually brings much more depth to the conversation. So is there any additions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'm looking for an approval of the public meeting agenda. Thank you, Fareed. Thank you so much. And I don't believe that we have any in-camera agenda items today, which I think is actually noteworthy. We committed actually as a committee to make sure that we actually bring as much as possible to all of the public. So thank you, and that's approved. And we're going to look at the next item, which is Chair's conflict of interest poll. Any conflict of interest?
Yep.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And it feels like it was just yesterday, but it wasn't, that our last minutes, which were October 26th. And have people had a chance to take a look at the minutes? We will look at the action list as well, but any changes, additions, challenges with the minutes? Terrific. And as I went through the minutes, I guess I just want to pause for a moment, and somebody who has actually contributed greatly to many of our previous agendas and to these meetings was Councillor Paula Fletcher, and I just wanted to publicly thank her for all of her contributions. I have no doubt that she will continue to be a voice advocating for our tenants across the city, and particularly in the riding that she represents. So if there aren't any changes to the minutes, I'm looking for an approval of the minutes of October 26th.
It's Carrie, so approved.
Carrie, and a seconder.
So Reed.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Thanks. Terrific. Okay, and let's take a quick look at the action items. And I thank you to the staff who actually are keeping us up to date on all of the items that come forward. Is there any questions or comments about where we're at? Most of the action items are either completed or still in progress, but and we will actually be getting to some of those. But any questions or comments on the action items? Okay. So they're nice and clear.
Yes.
All right, so that's just an item for information. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Tom Hunter to give us an update from the CEO, who I hear is having a special birthday coming up. But we won't mention anything about that, Tom.
Good, thanks. That's enough. Thanks. Yeah, through the chair to the committee. As Linda mentioned, this is a very kind of rich meeting and report. So there's not a lot for me to update on. Two items. First, wanting just to share with the committee that as we move into 2023, what we're hoping for the QTE. One of the things for the QTE agenda for March and the board for April is just to highlight more around some of the formal partnerships that we have at Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, and just how we see those evolving over the coming year and years. So, we've seen a lot of the work through the reports that are coming forth today around the engagement and the integrated service model. Just wanted to share with the board that we would provide. We want to provide more detail around these partnerships and what's happening within our different buildings across the city. So just something to look forward to, something more to look forward to for some information and our strategy for the partnership aspect of our mandate for 2023. And then just the second item I'd like to raise is just, I think this is some really good news. Is at two of our smaller buildings, we have actually been able to carve out space and will be carve out space for common rooms. So this is at 230 River and at 12 King High. Oh yeah, Jim. Hey Jim. There you go. Yes. So I think at 230 River, we still have to wait till there's a vacancy, but we do have approval from the city as a partner to provide a common space, and we have at 12 King High, we do have a room available, and so this was as part of the strong advocacy and encouragement from our tenants in these areas for that common space. Just wanting to share that we are moving forward on that. So that was, I think, some good news. So that is my report for today.
That's terrific because they were the only two buildings in out of our 83, our system of 83 that did not have common space. Is that right? I think that was per Brad's
I think
report.
Brad is the best one to check in on that through the
Yeah.
chair to care.
Yes, as we previously reported, they are the only two buildings
Yeah.
that have no space for tenants.
That's great. That's great.
Great, and that was perfect timing that Jim joined us
Yes.
because you've raised that issue about common space, and so thank you for that update.
Yeah, great.
So thank you for that that report. Tom, any other questions or comments for Tom? All right, well then we're going to go on to the work plan, which is proposed for 2023. And I
Yeah.
like to remind people that I think a work plan needs to be dynamic. So we don't know exactly what's going to, hopefully next year will be a predictable year and we won't have things that come out of the blue. But this is our best attempt at actually looking at a work plan so that we know what we need to be focused on next year. And it actually helps us in planning the meetings as well. And I think Grant is going to take us through the work plan.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Linda. And so just quickly, the work plan before you today, what we've done is structured an outlook on agenda items for each of the upcoming meetings for the year. So looking at planning out the topics and items to bring forward, aligning to the work that's underway and planned, and then looking across all the committees. So this gives us a sense of some of the standing items or items upcoming that you'll see. So for example, the operational dashboard has been on the QTE meetings to date, and that'll ultimately be replaced by our new KPIs that are being worked on right now. So the work plan before you is intended, as Linda noted, to be flexible to adapt to our requirements throughout the year, but also to give us a guide for the topics for each of the meetings. And you can also see the standing items and a few things that'll be coming up. One of the things that we're hoping and planning to do is a similar work plan for each of the other two committees as well. So this is a frame for this, and we'll do this going forward. It helps us to plan. There's a more detailed schedule of preparing for each of these meetings that Tom did share at the board level, and we talked about previously. And this aligns with that schedule and helps us to all be aligned as a committee as well in the work that's underway. So with that, right now the work plan shows, for example, our items planned for our next meeting in March and subsequent meetings after that, aligning to some of the things that happen throughout the year. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions on this approach and or the topics that are planned for the future.
Thanks, Grant. And I know that at previous meetings, we have talked about the right number of meetings. I believe that we may need another meeting kind of tucked in there when I look at the substantive items that this in the mandate of this committee. So, I think that what we should do is as we get into the new year, it feels like a long distance between some of the meetings. So I think that we need to actually take a look at that. And Fareed, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair to Grant. I don't have any fundamental concerns with the work plan. I think it's well put together, and the standard list of items I think makes a lot of sense. I'm just wondering though, not at every meeting, but we spoke a lot about innovation and entrepreneurship and all that sort of stuff at our last meeting. And I was wondering whether there is a possibility of you building one or two of those elements into the work plan over the next year or so. And it could be, 15, 20-minute presentation and what's happening in that space in tenant engagement, so that the committee members can be a bit more familiar with what's happening globally, if I can use that term. So it's something for consideration. I mean, I don't think it's an imperative, but I think it might be helpful for the committee to delve into some of that from time to time with staff's guidance.
Thanks, Fareed. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I was going to say through the chair and Fareed. We can certainly consider that, and I think that would be an added benefit to the type of information and that we would bring to this table. And I think some of it we'll take a look. We can work with you, Linda, as well. Take a look at what we've got planned in the existing view of the work plan and see what might make sense to bring forward at different times. You'll see the first half of the year is somewhat loaded with a few big items in terms of the interim strategic directions, the new tenant engagement model, the KPIs. There'll be a few things in the first half of 2023, but then in the second half is a little bit different. So I think we could take a look at that. And to your point, Linda, if we need an additional meeting, potentially between May and September, I think is another timeline we could look at too.
Yeah, thanks for that, Grant, and thanks, Fareed. I think I've been thinking a lot about this as well, and thinking about some of our partners on the Hollywood Squares that are actually working in at seniors long-term care at the city, where you're really distinguishing the city as a leader. And I think we want to be aspirational as well in housing, that we want to actually not just be seniors housing, but be the best we possibly can. And you know, we're the largest. And we have, like I would say, a fantastic team, and we have the backing of the city of Toronto, and we have amazing tenants. So I'm feeling that way too, and I think that we're off to a really good start. I'm amazed at actually what we have what we have in front of us, and if we just actually took a few of the reports that we have already and actually implemented it, we could be leading. And really think about the model. So I love the nods, and I feel like we've got some of the best people around and the best tenants and tenant leaders to guide us in this. So thank you, Fareed. Keep us to that. All right, any other questions, comments? Carrie, are you in agreement with that approach? And Jim?
Yeah, I absolutely. When you were talking about perhaps an additional meeting, I was looking at really focusing on between now and March the 9th. That seems like a long spell, considering how much is on the docket and how much is, coming to some type of, final decision. I agree. May to September is another one, but that'll be another board probably. But from now to March 9th seems like a long time.
So maybe through the chair, Carrie, we'll take a look at the schedule. I mean, depending on the items, I know some of the things that are on the March meeting are queued up for a lot of work between now and then to get ready for that.
Yes.
Agenda.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
There are certainly some bigger pieces in that timeline, but we can take a look and see if there might be a topic or two to insert.
Yeah. Yeah. If it works, and I think everybody recognizes how much work staff is doing. So if it works, and I think we've lost Linda.
Yes, I think we might have.
Okay. Well, Councillor Pasternak, welcome, or Councillor Crisani, hi. Would you like to?
Hi.
Did you have a comment?
Well, yeah, I was just quite intrigued by the listening tour. Great work, great talk. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I thought I got cut off here. And I'm just going through some of the findings, and it looks like, it's well attended by tenants. This is phenomenal. I mean, I'm quite accustomed to this. As you know, I think listening tours is something I do frequently in my own ward, and always engaged with the residents. And how do these tours come together? Is anybody invited to attend, or so can someone maybe please explain to me how that comes together? And I know there's a few more buildings in the first quarter of next year that are going to be attended as well.
That's perfect timing, because I think the next agenda item, I do apologize, it appears that.
Sorry. Okay.
But we could certainly, I think actually we could answer that question and actually move into the next agenda item if everybody's okay with the moving from the work plan.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. There it is. Yep, listening tour number 9.
Perfect timing, because we've got a really good presentation on exactly on the listening tour.
Okay, good. Look forward to seeing that. Yeah. Thank you.
So through the chair, if you want, Linda, I can sort of and respond to your question as well, Councillor Crisanti. So the listening tours started transition just after transition, and the intent was for the CEO, for Tom, to be out meeting with tenants and getting to become more familiar with the communities and have an opportunity to listen to the tenants and get input and feedback on different issues and matters that are of importance to them. To date, since starting the tours, he's been out to 46 buildings in the first segment of it since transition, and over 1,000 tenants have attended, as you note. The listening tour itself is something that is advertised, or information is put up in the building in advance of each of the tours to let the tenants know that there's an opportunity to meet with Tom. Tom usually attends with one or two of his staff members. We have the senior services coordinator for the building attend. And then we've also been coordinating and looking to bring in translators as well when it's been in an area where it's felt that a translator would help support the dialogue with the diversity and the tenants in the building. So it's something that's open to everybody. There's no restrictions. So we welcome everybody that is able to attend that session into the session. And then we track information in those sessions. Some of the details at a summary level are what you're seeing in the presentation that's attached to the agenda. And what we've been doing is appending information as we go through the tours. So you'll see that some of that information continues to build as we go along in the tours. And then we've been using that information to inform some of our, many of our initiatives, including the quality improvement projects that are underway now, which are on this agenda and another item as well, the interim strategic directions. And going forward, this will be one form for engagement with the tenants, not the only one, but Tom will be going out and completing the tour in the first quarter, roughly, of next year. And it's been quite a successful opportunity from a tenant lens, I think, to be able to speak to Tom and to have an opportunity to voice their thoughts and issues.
So there's a very robust presentation. I'm wondering whether it's worth like just highlighting some of the slides that actually have the feedback that we were receiving, because I think that I know that there's lots of tenants listening, and I think it's worth repeating what's actually what we're hearing.
Sure.
Worth putting up the slides. They were just, I thought they were excellent slides and a good summary. And just Councillor, we also will be sending out notification of all of the buildings that are left, and board members are welcome to attend as well.
So can people see my screen right now? So I'll just scroll through a little bit. This is in your package and on the materials that are part of the package on the website. And I'll just kind of scroll through to some of the findings. This slide highlights sort of the overall stats of the number of buildings and people attending, and where we are in terms of overall attendance, which is great. And then you'll see we have themes aligned to things like safety and security. And as you go through, just to highlight, you'll see some of it's in blue and some of it's in black. This is not the first listening tour report that we've done. So there were previous reports that had the initial things that are highlighted in the black font, but in blue, there are the additional things that are being added in as we continue to go along and meet with tenants. So this is giving us more and more input as we go forward. That's that blue since August reference there. Some things reoccur across sessions, and that's what the asterisks are helped to. We hear them multiple times. So you'll see that, as an example, more inclusive approach to racism and discrimination is something we've heard since August in the multiple sessions, more in-suite accessibility supports and things like that. But there's quite a bit of detail in here, which has been very helpful in terms of informing our work. So I'll just kind of go through it from a systems lens. You can see a number of things. This is all in safety and security. This is also one of our quality improvement projects, and there's a number of aspects to how tenants feel that safety and security can be better addressed. Some of them have to do with kind of more traditional safety and security aspects, a lot of things about cameras and things like that. But then we hear about better coordination of services and whatnot, other things that help tenants feel safe in their buildings. I'll just keep going. There was pest management, as this committee would know, is another key priority area where we've got the quality improvement project. This is something that we hear about in almost all. So when it's safety and security or pest management, Tom hears about this in almost every session at some level. And you'll see some different things that come up. I know I was at one of the sessions where the public access to waste disposal bins was one that started to come up in one building. One of the things that's interesting about the listening tour is every community is unique in its own way. So you do hear common themes, but you also hear things specific to the communities when you're in them. Communications, as we know, is another key thing that we've been hearing about in the listening tour and that we're working on broadly. So you'll see a number of things here about access to staff and improving how we communicate, the types of documents and the types of ways we communicate, how we do with posters and bulletin boards and things like that. So these are a number of things we're working on some improvement activities around now as well. And I'll just keep going. You'll see a number of things started to get added in the last little while, and including a lot more focus on the translators and interpreters associated with the tours. And then I'll just keep going. Then on tenant and staff relations, this relates back to the third quality improvement project. You'll see some stuff initially around the call center and access to information. As we get further into it, more supports being looked for, assistance with COVID and flu vaccine clinics, and other supports that we can provide to tenants or look at helping to get coordinated, facilitated for tenants. So a lot of good input and feedback that's coming through this, and it'll continue to be built upon. Use of space is another one. Access to the spaces in the buildings and what those spaces are used for to support tenants in their activities, social activities, and health-related activities. So a number of pieces to this. This is helping to inform some of the key policy review work that's underway now, for example, on the use of space and also the tenant action funds. So you can see a number of things there about how we could look at improving those. And some of these things are fed into work that's actually either underway or planned for these buildings. And then there's a sort of a high-level summary of some of the insights and whatnot. So I hope that this is, and there's a slide here that talks about how we're taking this feedback and building it into work that's ongoing and underway. I hope that helps to give a bit more detail. We're really pleased with these listening tours. I think it's helped to build a good starting point for this organization with our tenants as well. And there's also other opportunities for tenants to meet with staff. This will be this has been one of the main ways, but there are also some regional meetings and staff meeting with tenants on other more building specific things as well. If there's any questions, I could answer those.
Thanks, Grant. And I thought it was worth actually, I don't know if Councillor, if that answers some of your questions as well on the approach that's being taken to this.
Yes, it does. I think it's great information, but of course, any information is only as good as our ability to be able to implement solutions. And I'm looking at the slide that speaks to the issues that remain largely the same across the buildings and amongst the top issues. And I'm quite familiar with these issues. So we identify these issues. So now what happens? We address these at the board. We implement item by item suggestions on how we can correct them. So where does it go from here?
Great questions, and I think as a starting point, this was a starting point that the board directed that our new CEO actually visit all of the buildings. But I'm going to let, I think Fareed and Tom would like to actually respond to this. And Tom's been the star at these meetings, or actually, I think that people have actually really appreciated meeting you. But do you want to speak first, Tom, and then
Yes,
Fareed?
Yeah, through the chair, so to Councillor Crisanti, I think what you'll see in the balance part of this meeting around the quality improvement projects is a very good example of how we heard these issues from the tenants, and now we have improvement projects in place with both the tenants and staff and any contractors that might be involved, let's say, for example, on pest management. And so that's a kind of a formal way that we've taken to address those. But if you even look at pest management, we have reallocated our resources to begin to address some of these issues that we've raised. So that's one example how we've been able to very specifically address the issues that have been raised. And pest management is an example. Safety and security grant also raises another project, and then tenant staff relations. So those are formal ways, but also informally we're acting on these. And I think it's really also important that the notes that are taken at these sessions are shared with the regional manager. So some of the things we're building specific, they need to follow up on. And also, I often hear about some capital projects. When is this project going to be done? And so that's our ability to go back to the table, because Toronto Community Housing still owns the building. So at our situational table with Toronto Community Housing, we can revisit that capital project list and then get back to the meeting. So there's a really kind of iterative part to it, but also we can look at we're going to do how we'll undertake this over time. And another last point to that is around the I think with the integrated strategic directions, where you're going to see more high level, and then at the action plan level, you will start to see many of these items, system-wide issues addressed. So feeling that we're moving on a lot of those. And I just did want to mention the other part of the listening tours is before each session, I do spend 15 minutes to half an hour with the staff at that location. They're there. They give me a tour of the building. So it's just a chance for me to see kind of the state, the condition of those buildings and the amenities for the tenants, and just to ensure that we see continuity across all of our buildings. So it has been, I think really valuable for the organization, for our tenants.
Yeah, no, listen, I know this is really challenging, and and some of these issues are difficult, and they're ongoing. I mean, some of the things I'm reading here, I know I've been dealing with over the last 12 years plus, and they still exist today, and so that's my concern, and what can we do to so escalate it to a new level where we're beginning to get like real results in the area of infestation, pest infestations, particularly cockroaches and the pigeons on the balcony thing. That's rampant in many buildings, and it still is to this day. And the security issue and the unwanted and high risk visitor, that goes hand in hand. Where people let people in, and there needs to be more control and escalated security measures to ensure that the only people getting in are the people that live there, or delivering pizza, for example. But we got to know who they are. Yeah, so I think we have a lot more work to do here, and I really would like to see a situation where we've got it really well under control.
Thanks so much, Councillor Christina. And I think you actually are right on point today in terms of looking at the other agenda items. What I am encouraged by with the listening tour is actually the themes that are coming up, because I think this was a point of a new organization, and making sure that that Tom had a chance to actually be in all of the buildings and talk to many tenants, that we're actually seeing the same themes in the rest of the reports that are coming today, and hopefully actions as well. Fareed, did you want to just add anything? I know you had your hand up previously.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. I was going to echo some of the sentiments expressed by Tom, in that, we're quote unquote doing what I call rolling implementation. So as things come up, I know staff are tracking it and acting on it, and I think that's useful. And to the councillor's point, I think we need to ensure that we address some of these issues that we're hearing. I was going to make a suggestion, though, that perhaps what we should ask, maybe Tom, you and your staff can do, is perhaps do a roll-up of all the recommendations at the end of the tour, and we should try and see how we can build those into our interim strategic directions, because I think that's one of the ways that we can actually track and make sure that these things get done, and it's not just an exercise where we are not able to provide the kind of robust feedback we need. So maybe a report at the end of the tour with some recommendations, and many of these things, as Tom said, would have already been accomplished. But the last point I want to make, though, I think there are some what Grant described as some recurring issues, and the one that sort of struck me is the more inclusive approach to racism and discrimination issues. And that's more than simply an operational issue. I mean, I think some of that stuff needs to be built right into our plan as it is, and we need to sort of start tracking it and providing some report back on the kind of progress we're making in this regard. So that would be my recommendation, Chair, is just perhaps do a bit more of a systematic review and tracking at the end of the tour.
Yeah, thanks, Fareed. And I actually noted that that feedback from our tenants as well with regards to the racism. And I think we could be more deliberate in our actions with regards to that area and understanding that. So that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Tom and Fareed, for the additional comments. And Councillor, we appreciate your input as well. Maybe it would make sense to actually, so this is a report for information at this point, so we're not looking for an approval, but maybe it might make sense to actually move right into the operational performance dashboard. And for our councillor who's new to our board, this is us trying to actually put some rigor to what it is that we're actually trying to monitor as a board. And we got some good comments on the last meeting around the content and the process of actually displaying the data. And I think this is another one that would be helpful to maybe put up so that we can walk through it. And I think this one, is this one Grant as well? Yeah. No, Brad. Brad is on for this one. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, no worries. Give me 1 second, I'll put it up. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this is the operational dashboard, which is kind of a snapshot of some of the key performance indicators that we measure our successes against and plot some future projects against. So the next slide. Sorry, can everybody see the graph?
Can you make them bigger or something, Brad? They're
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I think that's about as big as I can get without losing them.
Okay.
All right. Cool. All right. So this just provides an overview of the arrears collection process, the vacancy rate, and the level at which staff complete work orders and administrative requests. Had a small increase in the arrears rate, which get into in a little bit later. You can see from the graph here on the top right that the vacancy continues to nosedive as we continue to work to fill units, and had a small decrease in the service level for work orders, but an increase in the administrative request process by the senior services coordinators. With regards to the arrears, they actually increased $53,000 from the month of September. Most of that increase, however, came from the legal filing stage. These are files where we're awaiting a hearing at the Landlord Tenant Board, which is an increase of $40,000. I think the key one on this slide here is this graph at the bottom here, which shows you the average balance a file has at each stage of the arrears collection process and ensures that staff are meeting with tenants and working them to resolve these balances while they're rather small, as opposed to allowing them to get out of hand. The average balance of somebody who is meeting with staff right now is $342, as opposed to $418 back during the summer. So making progress on that, but the files continue to progress through the arrears collection process. With regards to our vacancy rate, we entered into a target with our service manager at the City of Toronto. The rate that was set with the service manager was, why it's not displaying. I believe it was 3.72 that we were to be at the end of October, and we're currently set at 2.52% vacancy within the seniors housing. With regards to maintenance of work orders, providing you with a number of work orders that staff complete, number of work orders that are completed by vendors, as well as what the main category is for each of that. So just under 22% of all the work order requests that staff receive relate to pest control, to the earlier point. Staff are completing their work orders at 80%, and you can see there was a rather large uptake in the number of requests in the months of September and October, and this relates to our completion of the annual unit inspection, which is staff inspecting all 13,900 units within the portfolio. Pest control, which we heard was a theme earlier, providing a breakdown of the treatments and the treatment types. 744 units received a single treatment, Good news with regards to this is that today is the first day for the pest management supervisor. Ryan Jones has joined the business operations team and will be leading some innovations in that category as far as dealing with pest infestations and managing the contract with TCHC on our behalf. Administrative requests. These are requests completed by the senior services coordinators. These are tenants coming in and they're mostly looking for help with their annual review as well as documentation support. And we just track how many of these the staff are able to complete within a 5-day period, as well as where demonstrating the total numbers. So receiving just 2,600 requests from tenants with 18.2% being assistance with their annual review and their RGIs. The community safety unit, and this is numbers provided by Toronto Community Housing with regards to officers and their responses to ESHC building, where we've broken out by some of the categories, including officer-initiated arrests, meetings, and disputes in between neighbors. Does anybody have any questions about any of the KPIs that we measure or currently measure?
Brenda
Hi,
here.
Brenda.
Hi, thanks. Under administrative requests, go back to that slide if you could. You mentioned the top 5 service categories.
Yeah.
I'm struck by how much of their time is taken up with administrivia, if you know what I mean, like annual reviews, documentation, stuff like that. Maybe not in this context, but I'd like us at some point to maybe ask the question. Seems like we're spending a lot of staff time on stuff that maybe we could start simplifying administrative procedures, administrative practices. I mean, I think at some point, some looking at that, because if you're taking a lot of staff time just dealing with, that's not even dealing with quality of life measures or needs for health or referrals to other things, right? You know, this is just administrative. And I'm just wondering if there's a possibility that we can kind of re-examine some of our practice and procedures and see whether it could be simplified or made easier or user-friendly or different language in the document so people don't have to line up and get someone to help them fill out a form. I don't know what the thoughts are on that, but just seemed to me, I remember once at a job I had, we had a 5-page intake form. And when I asked them, well, what is the information you need to know? You really don't need to know their personal information, their financial, the source. You know, there's these areas you need to know. So it got reduced to 1 page after we looked at it, and hence better compliance. The staff then filled out the intake sheet, whereas before 5 pages, who's going to do that? You know.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. Any comments, Brad? And I know that this has come up before in terms of trying to simplify things and maybe also being proactive. If we always know, if we know that there's a percentage of people that are going to require assistance, is there ways of doing that? And I know Oach and others have come up with some of those ideas. Brad, any comments?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking at improving the process and helping the tenants, making the life a little easier for them. The one thing I'd say is that the rent geared to income forms and a lot of the information required through that are a requirement of the City of Toronto.
Yes.
We don't have a lot of leeway with what that is.
I understand.
That said, the city just redid the rent geared to income, the required documents, and lessened the burden on tenants to provide, as opposed to the 50 things they used to have to provide. Now I think they have to provide their income tax return and 2 other things.
Yeah.
So it should get a lot easier moving forward. And
yeah.
Hopefully that makes some sense.
Well, I just remember our summertime conversation talking about the access by tenants to the tenant fund and how many pages was it originally, and now it's been reduced to 2. So just stuff like that, if we could, I don't know how to build this in, but start looking at our procedures and practices with the idea of simplifying and using plain language increasingly. So it just means being conscious and aware and maybe building in some administrative component that we actually diligently look at these things.
Absolutely.
I'm appreciative of the fact, as you say, some of these forms we can't touch because they're not our responsibility. But I'm just struck with all that staff hour and time that we could spend in any number of other creative ways, and we're stuck having to help people fill out a form that really should be
Thanks, Brenda.
easily explained.
Yeah, really good, clear suggestions. And I know Carrie had some comments on that previously. So thank you for for trying to do that. Any other comments with regards to both the content, and I do note that I think some of the color changes are easier to decipher this time. So thanks for making that change. Any other comments in terms of the content, or?
Just one comment.
Yeah.
To Councillor Crisanti here. So I just wanted to, the arson, that seems awfully high. These are arson incidents across the 83 buildings. Is that correct?
There's actually, I don't believe there were any arson incidents last month, Councillor. The arson would demonstrate as orange. And
Well, that's okay. I'm looking at a printed sheet. It looks like a big chunk of orange on top.
oh, sorry.
So maybe it didn't print this. It's the wrong. Oh, good. I'm looking at the screen now. That's okay. It printed differently here. Okay.
I can't see orange. Which
Yeah, I
one's-
know. Okay, I got it. No.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to discern
Sliver
some of the
on top,
colors,
yeah.
isn't it? We're still working on that.
Yeah. So no, I'm looking now at my screen on my laptop. Yeah. Okay. No, not so bad. All right. One final question. Do we get our own CSU officers dedicated to the 83 buildings?
ECHC has dedicated what they call a community safety advisor, which is somebody that we work with regards to safety issues. To an earlier point about controlling access that comes within buildings, these are the people that we'd speak to about doing audits with regards to the electronic keys. So
Okay.
since the start of the listening tour, I believe we've canceled about 800 of the electronic keys that through audits that the community safety unit has done. With regards to dedicated officers that patrol only seniors buildings, no, they don't do that at this time. But we'll see what comes out of the quality improvement project relating to safety and security.
Okay, just a thought. I may want to explore that further at another time. All right, thank you.
It's a good point in terms of specialized, knowledge of seniors. I think Carrie had her hand up first, and then I'll come to you, Brenda.
No problem.
Yeah. Thank you. Just a question, Brad. The new pest management supervisor, Ryan Jones, is he a former employee, or has he come from completely outside the organization?
He is a former employee at Toronto Community Housing.
Great, great. That's fabulous. I had lots of experience with him. He is thorough. He's well liked. He really knows his business. So that is wonderful news for that position. Thank you.
He was an excellent hire.
Thanks, Carrie, for that word of support. Brenda.
Oh, that's encouraging.
Just a comment on the community safety incidents. Just want to red flag, not now, but at some point, if we could have a little more discussion and analysis of what these different types of incidents represent, and whether there's trends or things we should be sensitized to and maybe kind of being proactive. So, I know, like, what's a dispute versus something else, and just which ones are causing the greater problems. What is there a staff training component here that we might want to address to help them do their job here? I'm just always like to see this as a bellwether of trying to be proactive, and if we could have some down the road, some further discussion of what these safety things, so we understand the issue of safety from this perspective. That's only one aspect, but it's an important aspect.
Great, thank you, Brenda. And I agree. I think as we get deeper into this, anything that we can do that actually shows progress or challenges over time will be helpful. And the more we understand actually what's happening in the buildings, the better. So that's great. Any other comments or questions with regards to the our key performance indicators?
I do.
Go ahead.
I just
Go ahead,
wanted
Jim.
to make a comment about pest control here at the building, that the tenants are really impressed with the latest efforts around pest control. The place was really overrun with cockroaches and bed bugs when the latest superintendent came on, and he's gotten it completely under control, I think.
Wow.
Wow.
I haven't seen either in a long time now.
Thanks,
Wow.
Jim. It's really helpful to have feedback from our tenants. And you know, so thank you for letting us know. And we know we can't, we have to actually keep on top of this because this is something of great importance. And if there aren't any other comments, I think what we'll do is go to the next item because it actually segues beautifully, because one of the key performance indicators is actually pest control. So I think we're going to go to the, this is actually working out quite well for us on this agenda. So thanks for putting together a good flow of the agenda. And I think it's over to Grant for the key performance indicators. Do you think it's worth putting the slides up, Grant, or do you want to speak to it?
So just to clarify, Linda, the next item is on the quality improvement projects, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I can bring the report up on screen if it helps.
I think sometimes not everybody has actually, I think it just helps with the flow.
Just give me 1 second. I will get the report onto my screen. My apologies here. Just bear with me. I'm just scrolling down to it right now.
And since we started, it's great to have Brenda and Councillor Christiana join us. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite. Sorry I was late. I had a medical appointment. I was in between.
That's all right. It's always great to have your perspective. So thank you.
Okay, so I'm just about to share my screen. My apologies for the delay.
You're so polite.
Can everybody see? Maybe I'll just try to make it a little bit bigger. How does that work?
It's good.
Okay, so just wanted to give the committee a quick update on where we are with the 3 quality improvement projects. So we've referenced them in this meeting already, but just to clarify it, so the first one is on pest management, the second one on safety and security, and the third one on staff and tenant relations. And as we've already discussed, a number of inputs, including listening to and other aspects, have helped feed these particular initiatives in terms of what we're actually looking at specifically. In terms of where we are in the status of these, I'll just give a couple of key highlights. So back in late October, in advance of kicking off the quality improvement projects, we did hold an information session for tenants where they could ask questions and learn about the improvement projects and express an interest in participating. About 20 people attended that session. After that, we did ultimately get tenants involved. We've started each of the QIP's quality improvement projects, quality improvement projects. As of 2 weeks ago, we had our first kickoff meeting for the pest management project. Last week, we had our kickoff meeting for the safety and security. And in January, we have our kickoff meeting for the staff and tenant relations. So we've got, activity happening on all of the initiatives at some level now. 2 of them kicked off and 1 of them in the stages to launch. In terms of how often the teams will be meeting, this is something that is actually discussed within the context of the first meeting. So we're looking at having 5 meetings over the course of approximately 4 to 5 months. It could be a little bit quicker, or we could insert some additional meetings. So I'll let the committee know, for example, there's already been an additional specific meeting for tenants to talk about pest management and the sort of their journey in terms of how they feel about pest management services and what it's like to be a tenant and trying to deal with a pest management treatment, for example. So that's something that is taking place. And similarly, we're looking at similar things for safety and security. In terms of the teams that have been set up, so we have the sponsors. So both Tom and Jim actually have attended. Thank you, Jim, for attending and providing support for our 2 quality improvement projects that have launched. We have 29 tenants that are participating in the projects. So 9 tenants for pest management, 9 tenants for safety and security, and 11 tenants upcoming for staff and tenant relations. And though I don't, and I have it on the screen here, 16 staff. That includes staff from both TSHC and a couple of representatives from TCHC as well, who are supporting some of the service delivery aspects, in particular on pest management and safety and security, as we were just talking about a second ago, for example. And then we're also supporting each of these project teams as we move along. We've retained a facilitator for the the initiative through Western Management Consulting. So we brought on a facilitator to help facilitate each of the meetings. And so he has started and has been starting to do that work and will work with us through the initiative and all 3 initiatives as well. So there'll be some consistency and learnings through the process. For each of these, we developed a draft terms of reference, which is presented as part of the launch meeting. It includes the 5 elements of the project there in terms of launch, looking at the current situation, future state, how we might implement this, and ensuring success or monitoring over time. So this is something that we put a base structure in place when we get feedback in each of the meetings. And then we put together also an information package associated with each of the quality improvement projects to help inform. This is something that really gets discussed in more detail in the second meeting for each of these, but it includes a summary of available data, looking at other jurisdictions and best practices, actions taken to date. And then we're open to getting, as for example, in our safety and security, we did get recently some thoughts about how we could get additional data, for example, into the discussion. And while we're doing this work, though, and we talked about this in previous meetings, there are concurrent activities that are also ongoing. So we're not necessarily waiting for the quality improvement projects to conclude before we actually move on some of this stuff. And we've already talked a little bit about what we're doing in pest management and safety and security as well. So the idea is to ensure that we're moving forward where we can while these improvement projects are underway. And then where there are actions that are coming out of this, we're going to also look to implement those in both the context of any quick wins or shorter term actions, and there might be some longer term things as well. All of this will also be aligned into our interim strategic directions, and so that we ensure we have alignment overall of these actions. I'll stop there. Our intent is to bring updates back to this committee on a regular basis as to where we are. And so I'm very happy to report that 2 of the 3 have launched, and we're on our way with these initiatives now. I won't take any questions.
Great, thanks, Grant. And it's okay if you want to stop sharing. That's great. Thank you, Brenda.
Just a quick, who are the sponsors? What's?
So at the executive level, we have Tom as the CEO.
Okay.
And we have Jim as a tenant board member.
Okay, sorry, I didn't quite know that. And the team that I think it was 4 staff that were allocated to pest management and helping the tenants. Are they on board it now?
I'll let Brad speak to that. So
and then secondly, have they been I don't know, deployed, whatever the word is? Have they been used frequently, or how often has they been relied upon to help?
Yeah, so through the chair, the supervisor, as we noted earlier, was hired. The 2 licensed technicians have been hired and have been working in the field for some time with the site staff. We're still recruiting for the people to do the preparation in the tenants units. However, we've supplemented that with some contractors, and we've been using them to help assist tenants with ensuring that they receive proper pest treatments.
And contractors, you mean who? Like outside people that were
an outside vendor.
Okay. And the pest control contract is through Toronto Community Housing, right? They're the main lead on that.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so who evaluates the quality of the contractor's work? Will that be part of the work of this committee, or is it Toronto Community Housing that does that and then reports back to us? I'm just trying to get the line of accountability here.
So for
that's been the problem, right?
Yeah.
Part of the problem.
So for the last couple of weeks, since the 2 environmental health techs came on board, they have been doing that. They've been attending buildings and reviewing the pest treatments, reviewing the paperwork submitted by the vendor. And then we've been escalating that through the situation table to Toronto Community Housing's vendor management team.
Okay.
To take up with their vendor. A lot of that'll fall on the new supervisor who's now onboarded to maintain that relationship with Toronto Community Housing and the contract lead over there.
So it's still a couple steps removed from our direct control.
Correct.
We're still dependent on other people trying to make people do their jobs. Okay. Just want to note that, because sometimes our hands get tied and we don't have as much control as we had hoped.
Yeah, it was good to have some feedback though from Jim that there was a positive experience in
Yeah,
at least his building. So maybe we could take that back to, you know, I think that we did actually get some of the stats on the number of treatments that people have received, but maybe there's also something around the experience, like some evaluation of you know, what was the experience like for the tenants, both in preparation and outcome? Are the bugs gone, and are they being maintained in that way, which is kind of important. But thank you for that update. Any other comments or questions about these 3 KPIs? You can see actually things are actually aligned with what we're hearing, and we could probably have, or I mean, the QIPs. There's too many letters. That we have these 3 to start, and we have an engagement. Any other comments or questions?
Linda, through the chair, I just wanted to clarify. So from there's also the leadership team leads associated with each of these initiatives. So for pest management, that's Brad. For safety and security, that's myself. And for staff and tenant relations, that's Dave Slater. So I just wanted you to understand, because I know you'd ask about that leadership or lead kind of level.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that they are our contact. When you said, you know, how do we oversee this, Brenda? I think it's through those leads to come and report to us and to give us the data so that we can actually be have that governance oversight.
Yes, thanks, because that's important.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Okay, thank you very much. And I think it's still you, Grant, for the next one. This one was for information as well, so we can move on to the verbal report on the interim strategic direction. And as people will remember, if they were on the last meeting, we have decided to do a focus on strategic priorities as opposed to a robust strategic plan at this point. And I think Grant is going to give us an update on where we are at in that planning.
Yes, so Linda, through the chair, actually, I think we took the verbal update on this particular item off the agenda for today, but I can give a very quick update on this item if through you. So
I'm sorry, I think I'm looking at my draft agenda, so I just threw you under the bus.
No, it's okay. I can. It's fine.
So much paper.
I'll just highlight that for the committee, we did have a board workshop last week on the interim strategic directions, where we had an opportunity to walk through the structure for that and some of the initial thinking that had been developed in terms of strategic objectives, enablers, and the context around how we move that forward. We do plan to, as a next step, we're evolving the content and views of that from that workshop last week, and we will start to reach out to some other stakeholders in January to get additional input and feedback on that. That'll include the city, some external stakeholders, the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee, for example, and then we'll bring that all together and ultimately bring it back here to the March Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee for preparation to bring that forward ultimately to board at the subsequent meeting after that.
Thanks very much. Yes, I think I was going to mention that in my chair's report. So thank you very much for that, Grant. We'll have that minuted. If there aren't any other questions on that, thanks, Grant, for being right on top of that. And if I have it correct, and I'm sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty right now getting my my agenda up on my other computer because I've got some technicians in the backyard. I think the next item I think we have a deputant on.
Yes.
Is that right?
We do. So Bill Lohman.
Lohman is on the line, disputing on item 12, engagement model update.
Thanks so much. Hi, Bill.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Hunter, Councillor Crisanti. Thank you for joining us today and welcome, and as well as members of the committee. I am sometimes I find myself almost speechless. And that this year has been extremely busy and fruitful in many ways. I think back to where we were a year ago. And as a matter of fact, it was a year ago, tomorrow was when I was looking for the list of the senior tenant leaders. And today we actually had our first meeting in the Northwest where we got to meet, you know, some of my brethren, if you will. And, you know, I've seen just a massive amount of work that's been done by everybody at that table and by housing staff. There are some things that I'm not going to let you get away without picking at a couple of things here. And that is it. And I think that we're seeing this because as these things are starting to come together, what's becoming evident is there's, and I raised this a couple of years ago at first stack meetings, that where's the connection that draws the integrated service model together with tenant engagement? And what we're finding here is that it seems that the staffing model is focused on very specific things, and all of the KPIs, they're all housing focused, or on the actual supports of the tenants that need it. And I've been raising concerns about the fact that there's a full 80% of senior tenants who are not considered to be in that priority category that the SSC is specifically supposed to deal with. And so it raises the question about what happens in the common area. What happens in the social structure of the buildings that, I mean, we're talking about wellness. Wellness includes that's not just your sense of security, but your sense of connection and that communication and that sense of belonging, and feeling that you're involved or feeling you have a say. You know, these are the things that we are working on in somewhat regimented fashion in trying to put together an engagement, an engagement model for tenants. So so it raises a question for me, and what is the purpose of engagement, and who's accountable for it, and who is responsible for it, and what's the role of staff in it? Because the person that I would be thinking that would be sort of gearing and helping to move the community along with the tenant leaders would be the SSC, but they have a different role. So I think, these things are very important, especially when it comes to the wellness of tenants when there are emergencies. And how sometimes it's an emergency because of privacy. Well, the ambulance is here, the fire trucks, the police cars and everything, they're here for hours and then gone and not a word. And the seniors community, it's very detrimental. Because particularly with the 80 and 90-year-old folks, it scares them. And so we've been really pushing to have some sort of a conversation about the common areas and how we can actually have a collaborative effort. Just some food for thought. But anyway, thank you very much, and I'll be back. I'll be back shortly to say hi again. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. You have a great ability to ask the really hard questions, and I don't know if before we actually hear about the engagement model, whether Tom or Grant or anyone wants to talk about, respond to the who's in charge on the engagement front and how it links.
Chair Linda, I'll try to provide some context. And in the update I'm about to give, I'm hopeful that there'll be an opportunity to share that not all of the new model, like we're in a process now where we have to develop the new model, so we don't necessarily have it all figured out. I would say in terms of roles and responsibilities, there will be a joint responsibility amongst different staff and different roles on the staff side and also on the tenant side in whatever the model ultimately is defined to include from both the staff and tenant lens. And today, for example, some of the work that we do on tenant engagement is sort of a joint on the staff side, is a joint activity that happens between a blend of the communications team, the operations team, and at times the strategy team as well, depending on the topic and or initiative. So to build and to the point and the question, I think it's going to ultimately be a bit of a joint accountability for different requirements. However, I think we need to go through the process to actually figure out what that might mean. And also to Bill's point with regards to looking at it holistically in terms of how our tenants are supported and how different things contribute to wellness and overall success in their tenancies and how being engaged in their communities and the role of the SSCs, for example, in those communities and whatnot, how that can help support them and broadly is something to be continue to evolve. And it's something where the ISM, and I know the evaluation is coming up in the next item after this, has helped to move that forward, for example. So I hope that helps provide some context. I think that ultimately when we do get through the next stage, and I'll talk a bit about the engagement model plan to get that developed, we will have more clarity on roles and responsibilities to help ensure that there's an opportunity for that to be more specifically defined.
Great, thank you. And a question, Brenda?
Yeah, just a comment about, Bill mentioned this and I read it in one of these reports. Sorry, I'm just overwhelmed with reports these days. But the missing piece maybe is this concept of building community. Community development was the phrase used in one of the reports. And it is about building community. So maybe in a sense that could be our fourth, going forward, our fourth priority. Is that the word we're using? We have the three
Tips.
Yeah.
Those are our QI, the quality improvement.
Yeah, the QI. Yes, thank you. I'm getting
something about building community. Yeah,
that's right. And maybe that should be the fourth one, and it will be different configuration of people participating possibly in that too, because it's a kind of a broad topic. How do you build community? But I think that's at heart. The reason we want tenant engagement is not just to have opinions, right? Obviously, but we want to have improved living environments, obviously, right? Touching base with people who with lived experience. But I think the ultimate goal is, and this gets back to the idea of aging in place and that this is your home, is how best can we create in all these 83 little villages that we call buildings, how do we create community and sustain community? So people feel a sense of there's someone looking after their back.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. I think you've nailed it. What Bill was saying in terms of not just focusing on the services, but actually kind of the substance of people's living community. Brad, did you want to add?
In addition to that, we're currently in recruitment for 4 community services coordinators in order to help facilitate tenant events and tenant engagement within our communities. Funny enough, the screenings have actually taken place, and the candidates will be interviewed on the 21st and the 22nd of this week. So hopefully we'll have some people in place in the communities to help facilitate development or very early in the new year.
That's great. Thanks for that update. And did you want to add anything else, Grant, in terms of the report?
Through the chair. Yes, Linda, just very quickly. So I just wanted to highlight, so we are looking to bring in support to help us in the next stages of developing this model. And we recently held an RFP to look to get a vendor to help us with the consultations and ultimately in the development of the model. Things that are part of the work that would be undertaken, including an environmental scan and best practices review. We're looking at consultations with a broad and diverse range of tenants in our communities. And I want to highlight something that maybe wasn't clear in the report and could be clarified, is that includes explicitly the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee as well. And the report does mention STAC later on in the context, but it could be interpreted as more at the end of it, and that wasn't the intent. So the idea is to have STAC involved throughout, including the working group that's being mentioned there. We are looking to have a fully designed model developed, including the roles and responsibilities and guidelines and whatnot, so that we actually have something that we could move forward on once we are comfortable with what it is and implement that, because we know this will be something that will help in the broader context of getting our tenants feeling engaged in their communities, and an opportunity of how to support that from our lens as the corporation. I will let this committee know that we did go out for RFP, and unfortunately we didn't get any bids. So we're going to have to go back and review. We're reviewing that right now as to what our next steps are. So this is going to put a little bit of a delay in our work, because we had anticipated we'd be able to move forward a little sooner. But anyway, we're working with our procurement team at options in terms of moving forward with looking to get some support on this going into early 2023. And we're analyzing some feedback on the previous process to see what we can do, possibly some of the options going forward. This is really critical work for this organization, and so we acknowledge and recognize that, and we want it to be done well and done in an effective way. So to that point, we'll continue to bring updates back to the committee as we move along.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and it's interesting, just the prerogative of the chair. You know, one of the concerns when we have a lot of different vendors coming in and providing input on key areas of focus is that they need to align, and that was my only concern in terms of actually another vendor coming in. And you know, maybe over time we will build capacity in house to be able to actually lead this work. I understand we're in early days, but I'm sure that we're making efforts on that front. Any other comments or questions about Grant's report?
Linda, I just share your last comment that you just made.
Yeah, let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we do understand, Tom and company, that there's a lot of moving parts, but there's some really heavy hitting areas that are important in it, and I think the ISM is another one that we'll move on to. And so, if there aren't any other questions or comments, thank you very much. And I think Bill is deputing on this one, and then Andrea is going to lead us through a really very substantive evaluation report on the ISM. I think back over to Bill.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes.
We do. Hi, Bill.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. First off, I want to say to our city leaders that housing staff deserve a big round of applause for all of the work that they put in over this past year, and especially being understaffed, and as everybody is, and probably is going to be for the foreseeable future. Now there is I have a couple concerns about the not so much about the work that's been done, but about the accountability framework itself, because I believe that it has a role that kind of plays into some of the concerns that we're seeing on the ground, because it's tenants right now. What we're seeing is that we're being treated to the accountability framework that really doesn't include a lot of tenant voices at this point. And we're still kind of working on that. And the only things that are, they're really of focus are the housing type of issues. The city's original plan, from what I can envision, is a broad city plan that, for seniors all across the city. And it seems that what's behind it, or part of it, is that it's looking at the asset-based community development model, as Brenda was talking about. And, you know, this is what I'm learning being involved in Health Commons programs, as, you know, as well as some Red Cross things, that, you know, that there is this sort of connection with the agencies and, you know, as being the assets for the overall city. I think where I see a problem is that the original framework kind of didn't really take into consideration the lack of resources that low-income seniors face. And as a result, we have, they do not have the same ability to be able to group and fund themselves and their, you know, their own engagement initiatives. And so this is where some of these things start coming into play, where they need to connect. And because the accountability framework was built in consideration of the entire city, not just senior housing, I would like to just suggest the possibility of rethinking the accountability framework to see how we can include a tenant voice in that framework. Because one of the issues that we see is an accountability issue on the ground. There's staff have accountability to all kinds of things and to tenants on specific issues that are related to KPIs. But those things that fall outside it, like I was saying in the social arena, those things are being left up to the tenant leaders. And if we don't have that same ability to be able to build that community, we don't have the resources to motivate, you know, other members in our community to come out. You know, we can't afford to do this out of pocket. And there is, you know, there is some effort that's being talked about, and, you know, some funding that's been made available, and it's certainly appreciated. But I think it might be worth considering down the road, you know, that to make the model more self-sufficient, that having funding sources for these communities to be able to get that leg up so that they can start building that community, as well as including outside entities and agencies and groups. And, you know, there needs to be a starting point, and, you know, it can't start from 10 feet in the ground, so to speak. But anyway, that aside, I know that's a mouthful, but I hope it gets some consideration, because I think we build that accountability in, that it will, it'll start mitigating some of what tenants perceive as lack of accountability in different areas. So, but anyway, with that said, I just want to wish you all happy holidays. And again, thank you very much for this wonderful year. It's busy. I'm ready for a break. But then we're starting right up again in January. So thank you again, folks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lohman, for your ongoing comments, and there's some applause back to you as well, and happy holidays
Absolutely.
as well. And we expect you back in January. No problems. I saw Andrea that was nodding as you were speaking, so maybe you can take it away, Andrea, and I'm sure you can address some of Bill's suggestions as well.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrea Austin, Director of Senior Services and Community Programs in Senior Services and Long-Term Care. Jennifer Dockery, our General Manager, had to step away to take a phone call, but I did want to introduce to you two key members of our team. Joseph Burley, maybe give a wave. There's Joseph Burley, and Jessica Lee. There's Jessica, and these are two kind of leads that pulled this report together. So we are very pleased to be here today and to submit our 2021 evaluation report on the integrated service model, working with tenants to drive change. And this report represents the culmination of many months of work by city staff, with ongoing expert advice from members of the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee, STAC, and tenant directors. So the content is near final, and we are working to deliver a fully designed, formatted, and AODA compliant report back to the board at the February 2023 meeting. So the work on this evaluation began back in April 2022 with receipt of the 2021 ISM program report from Toronto Seniors Housing staff. So we applied a results-based accountability model. So how much was done, how well, and is anyone better off as a result? And then building on the Toronto Seniors Housing Program report, which focuses very much on the how much part of the results-based model, we set out to understand the how well part of the model, how well was it rolled out, and identify whether anyone is better off as a result. So with that approach in mind and working collaboratively with senior tenants, we generated the concrete, actionable recommendations for improvement that you have in front of you today. So for the purposes of this evaluation, the city integrated 3 streams of information. First, by learning from the past. So by reviewing and incorporating qualitative input previously gathered from tenants on the integrated service model through resources like the Joy Connolly report on tenant engagement and the Health Commons report on senior health and wellness. And then second, by learning from the data. So by collecting and analyzing quantitative outputs and key performance indicators from various ISM partners to assess the early activities and impacts of the ISM model. And then third, by learning directly from senior tenants and staff. So we did that by conducting extensive engagements with over 200 senior tenants and 18 staff over the spring and summer of this year. So drawing on all of this information, our team developed 12 high-level recommendations and 54 practical ideas to improve the delivery of the integrated service model in the short, medium, and in the long term. And all of the recommendations are derived from the experiences and the thoughtful input of senior tenants engaged throughout this evaluation. And this report would not have been possible without them. So specifically, we'd like to acknowledge the collaboration of STAC and the tenant directors who brought a vital tenant perspective to every stage of this evaluation, from the overall approach and the engagement planning through to data collection to the development of the final recommendations. So this experience working really closely with STAC and tenant groups reinforced a key lesson from the recent Health Commons report, which is that senior tenants are the experts of their own experience, and they represent an invaluable asset in redesigning and delivering services that address their needs. So as we work in partnership to advance these recommendations, ongoing and meaningful engagement with tenants will be critical. We have framed our report with this in mind, presenting recommendations that center tenant partnership and, wherever possible, drawing connections between our ideas and the redevelopment of the tenant engagement model underway at Toronto Seniors Housing. So we're bringing this report forward for information with recognition that the full implementation of these recommendations will require board direction and will be subject to financial and resource considerations. Nonetheless, we firmly believe that this evaluation can signal a turning point and opportunity for transformative change in social housing for Toronto seniors. Much like the path of the Health Commons report, it's our hope that this report can serve as a resource to inform ongoing strategic plans and service coordination that better responds to tenant needs. So whatever next steps are determined, the city remains committed to supporting the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation to advance these recommendations and lead the ISM as council intended in true collaboration with tenants, with staff, with the city, and with health and social service partners. We look forward to walking this path and fostering vibrant, active, and inclusive tenant communities. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks, Andrea. And I'm kind of glad that I mentioned the strategic priorities grant, because I think that you know, you've given us an extensive report with some very clear recommendations, but a lot of content, actually at a critical time where we're looking at priorities going forward and looking at this and the Health Commons report. And I would think that we have an opportunity to actually make sure that these recommendations are operationalized. Any other comments or questions? It was an excellent report, a lot to digest. Brenda.
Just a thought, based on a few comments people have made. Going forward, obviously not right now, but going forward, I'd like us to consider whether the need for honorariums for our tenant leaders. This is a lot of consultation we're asking of them. I mean, I'm overwhelmed just reading the various committees and the advisory bodies and the you know, different initiatives going on parallel with each other. And it's certainly an issue in my community where we've always been asked to provide knowledge and information, and we're never paid. And then they turn around and hire a consultant to do the very thing that they won't pay us as advisors. And so I'd like to seriously at some point consider, we're asking a lot out of people through a number of these processes. And I think at some point we need to look at honorariums for either staff members or whatever leadership model we go with. I just want it to consider, how do we compensate people for their efforts? And I know this is a contentious issue and lots of debate, which we won't do now. But I
think it might be worthwhile to actually hear from Andrea, because I think that there is actually some thought that's gone into this already. Andrea?
Yeah, just wanted to clarify that we did in fact offer honorarium to the tenants who and staff members who participated in this report.
I saw that.
If it was right, like if it was a lobby intercept, then it was a $5 gift certificate, and if it was kind of a more lengthier conversation, it was a $25 gift certificate.
I saw that.
And just to say that we are actually hoping to get a Toronto Urban Fellow to develop an honorarium policy for us in the second rotation at the city, which starts in February, March. So it's an issue that's very much top of mind for us as well.
Good. Yeah. Good to hear that.
Yeah, and a lot of organizations are actually dealing with this, as well as we actually ask for more and more good input from tenants and community members. Grant?
Just through the chair, just so that this committee is aware, we also do provide an honorarium to the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee for their regular meetings and their commitment in that space as well. So
how much is that?
That's 40. It's a gift card equivalent to $40 per meeting.
Per meeting. Okay.
Yeah. Up to a maximum of up to $500 a year.
Yeah, thank you. And this probably speaks to us actually making sure that all of us are oriented to the processes that are in place and the gaps that exist there. But you are making a good point in terms of the amount of engagement that we have actually asked of people over the course of this year is quite tremendous.
Extraordinary. Yep.
Yeah. Other comments, questions, reactions to the evaluation document?
Are we voting on this, or does it go to the board, or where does it go?
At this point, we're not voting on it. I think it's for information at this point. I think that we have to actually, that was kind of my question to Fareed, is we probably do need to actually discuss how we actually take this report forward, and feels like a little bit of a long distance from this meeting to the next meeting to be able to do some work on this. Carrie?
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. And Andrea, thank you for that concise summary of this really, really detailed report. So just congrats to you, to to Joseph and Jessica for pulling this together. It's absolutely excellent. You mentioned, one key takeaway that goes across all of our reports, and that there is no one-size-fits-all solution to anything, that we need to create tailored solutions that address priorities at the unit, the building, and the regional level. That was part of Grant's presentation as well, with the listening tour. As Tom well knows, we've had some sessions where it's been nothing but security, and others where it's about nothing but pest management. So it's really a good reminder that nothing is one size fits all. Every situation is unique. We are looking for some commonality across the 83 buildings, but the need to be flexible is just, super important. But congrats again. It's an excellent report.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carrie. And I wonder if I can put some of the staff on the spot in terms of next steps with regards to this, because there's, this requires actually pretty significant investment. Tom, thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but thank you.
Through the chair, thanks, Linda. I actually had a couple comments to this report. I too would like to thank Jennifer, Andrea, Jessica, and Joseph for their work on this. Really appreciate it. And so, in terms of next step, I know that I was talking to Grant earlier today, and so staff here for one will be meeting with Health Commons to look at what came out of that report. We'll be looking to meet with the team at the city regarding this ISM report, and delving into it more in terms of the recommendations and where we see this all feeding together, or really starting to map things out is with the interim strategic directions. We will have what you will see is, and Mary spoke about this in our session with the board, about the action plan. And they're already Mary and the consultant and others combing through these reports to look at, for example, these 12 recommendations in the ISM, and where will that feed into this interim strategic direction, into that action plan. And so I remain optimistic that in terms of next steps, more in-depth just review, looking at these reports, and then how do we ensure that it gets embedded into our work for 2023 as part of that action plan. And I think too, just there is a lot right there. There's enough work for us for 5 years. But so that being said, that there will have to be kind of priorities set within all of this. But to me, it's going to, I think, very nicely start to fall out and work through within this action plan with the interim strategic direction. So thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Fareed.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, and that's my issue. And since I've been appointed to this board, there's been lots and lots of report coming through, and I worry a lot about how we're tracking them and then how we're getting action. And I mean, some of them are administrative and operational, and I'll use a term I used earlier, which is the kind of rolling implementation, which we expect Tom and his staff to continue to act on. But I think we need some way of making sure that the key recommendations, or at least the one that we think needs to be dealt with, are addressed in the interim direction. So, Tom, I leave it up to you and your staff to find a way of ensuring that the comprehensive nature of the recommendations coming out of the different reports are somewhat prioritized. And we can perhaps have a conversation at one of our board meetings about how these things fit into the strategic directions, and one that needs to be deferred or deliberately deferred, and the ones that need to be fast-tracked.
Yeah.
Fast-tracked. So, yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. I think we can't lose sight of this. This is critically important, and the Health Commons recommendations, which I think you did reference, but I worry about that too, that we have this window of opportunity. So if we had that pathway forward, and I know that the city would help us with that too. We've got the right brains behind this, but and I include that the tenants' perspectives. Any other comments, questions, thoughts?
No, I just want to apologize for leaving Jennifer out of that list of people who've done this fantastic report. You have to respect the antlers,
Yeah,
and the boss. So
yeah, congratulations. Yeah, Jennifer, we acknowledge you as well. And you know, we said it before around the innovations. Like this is innovative. Like so, you know, there's not many organizations that actually have this kind of a quality of report in the Health Commons report at this early point in there. But now it's actually all within us to make sure that we actually move forward and make it a different experience for people living in our seniors buildings, so that it's not just a report and KPIs and QIPs, but actually where I live actually is a great place to live, and there's good community coming together. Brenda.
I just forgot what I was going to say. Go on to the next speaker and I'll.
All right. Okay, we're just
quick comment,
to,
Linda.
yeah.
I have a quick comment and.
Oh, I know what it was. Okay.
Yeah. Hold on.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Who, me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, quick question was just in terms of our partnerships. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. In particular with, well, it's not LINs anymore. What do they call themselves? Community health.
Community and yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Have we got commitments from them as to whether they'll be, I don't want to use the word guaranteeing, but that they will actually provide our tenants and residents, thank you, dear, with home care hours, like personal care support? Everyone talks about partnering and cooperation, and the whole thing, in my opinion, of aging in place, you know, will die on the battlefield if we can't get LINs to guarantee hours, personal care hours for people's support. That will really be the thing that allows them to age in place. So I don't know if it's too soon or whether they're hesitant to make those commitments, but have we been able to get any sort of commitment out of them?
Do you want to tackle that one, Andrea?
I think Tom had his hand up first.
Oh yeah, thanks, Tom. Sorry.
Okay, I can go first, but you know, Andre, they probably want to hear more from you than me. So Brenda, I had made a comment to kind of just I think earlier in the meeting before you had gotten on just about this whole partnership is a big area for us to really, I think, take a closer look at for sure in 2023, because I think to use the term, I would use the term, our partnerships are very fragmented. We have better representation in certain regions of the city. We have better relationships and from an evaluation perspective with certain service providers that we see in others. And I mean, these are things that I hear and you know, tenants share, and as do the staff. And so, you know, one of with this area of kind of partnerships and where we get these commitments from, because it's going to have to be different across the city, because the providers are different and have different kind of influence and presence around our buildings and in those communities. And so that's where there needs to be more focused work in those partnerships. And I think too, these reports will help us, you know, begin to you know, diverge or converge, I guess, on those areas where we need those supports for certain buildings in certain communities.
And it's hard to get them to be accountable. I understand the difficulties, but we have to. My experience has been that everyone talks about partnering in this, but until they do it, you know, the rubber hits the road somewhere, and it's got to be increased hours of personal care service. And my experience with St. Matthew's, Brackendale, you know, where my sister and friends live, where they have a contract with LINs for so many dollars per year for service, and then of course they dole it out accordingly as to how the tenants need it. And it's not enough, so there's always this battle about having to go back to the main office to get additional hours, and they often turn it down because they say, well, you live in St. Matthew's, Brackendale, and you have supportive living hours provided. No, they don't do personal care unless it's in these very specific situations.
Yeah.
So my experience has been, if you really don't bring health to the table and get them to commit, then you're just, you know, you're talking to the wind here, because you can only age in place if you have direct services in your home when you need it.
Yeah.
Not a theoretical model of support.
Thanks, Brenda. And Andrea, I think you wanted to comment on that too.
Yeah, so we here at the city, we have relationships with Ontario Health, with the Ontario Health teams in the different regions, and we have relationships with home and community care support services. Tom and I have put together the ISM strategy table, which is where we sit down with the health partners and community service agencies to talk about and to improve our relationships there. So that work is underway, but I just want to turn it over to Joseph to add some more meat to this bone.
Thank you, Andrea. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your kind words on this report. And Brenda, really excellent question, because we think that the interface with the health system is really one of the pieces that makes the ISM so innovative and where it has the most potential for impact. And while there has been a lot of progress and a lot of success, there are some issues that we need to work on with respect to the partnership with Ontario Health and the home and community care support services. So for one, there are these care coordinators who are supposed to enhance access to things like personal care and home care. But from what we heard from tenants, there are major barriers and gaps in the knowledge of and awareness of who those people are, what buildings they're assigned to, what services they provide, how you can get connected. So we issue a ton of recommendations and present a ton of concrete ideas about how to enhance that awareness. In addition to that, it's not even always about awareness, but about the access, where you as a tenant are navigating this labyrinthine, provincial health system. And one of the things we heard from tenants and staff alike is that sometimes it's easier to circumvent the provincial system and just get the service from a local agency, from an organization just down the road. Which is why we also make recommendations around creating new, more regional and community-based partnerships with the health system, some of which already exist in the corporation. I think most immediately of the North Toronto care team with Baycrest and the Ontario Health teams there that, based on engagement at the building level, have started offering satellite clinics in the buildings and could be scaled to other regions to offer services based on need there. And then the last part is I do think we can be doing more as a provider to establish formal agreements or memoranda of understanding with these partners to make sure that there is accountability there, that the scope of services are identified, that there's a tenant engagement component involved in determining what services are being delivered at the building or community level, and asking tenants if those needs are being met. So it certainly is a major focus in the report. And I think as we work to embed some of those considerations into the interim strategic directions or the QIPs or however we undertake action planning, from a city perspective, those will be front of mind for us.
But clinics is not the same as personal care. Rubber hits the road, and most places don't provide personal care. You'll get housekeeping services from community agencies.
Absolutely.
But they don't do personal care. That's still linked to health.
Yeah, we need to work on that.
Brent. So I just want to stress
Councillor Cristiano had his hand up, patiently waiting. Do you want to comment?
Oh, there we go. Quickly, thank you so much. So two things. Well, Andrea, Joseph, great report. I just focused on the second recommendation that speaks to enhancing recruitment, training, and retention of staff to meet building level and regional needs. Totally agree with that. I mean, that's an excellent recommendation. And then the earlier comment about community service coordinators and recruiting, I believe 4 coordinators for different regions. So all of this takes money. We're into, as everybody knows, we're going into a budget process right now. Are we going to be identifying potential costs? Or is there going to be a line item on a budget somewhere to move these recommendations along so we can actually action them and see some results in a reasonable time frame over 2023? How does that come together?
Yeah, thanks for the question. In terms of the overall report, and Tom, I don't know if you have any comments about that. I did want to say that I think that what I'm hearing in this report too is that we have a lot of work to do on partnerships, and it's beyond home and community. That in neighborhoods, it is actually community agencies, and and making that connection. And and making spaces for those partnerships and MOUs and formalizing things, which, you know, in itself is probably something that we're going to have a strategic priority for. Tom, do you have any comments in terms of the next steps from the councillor's perspective?
Yeah, through the chair to the council, and I'll try and get this, you know, a response, a direct response to your question, councillor. So we the as it relates to those positions that Brad identified, and like the community services coordinators and any of the other staff within the kind of operations within the buildings, those they are all within, you know, the complement that we're looking for approval for 2023. They are not essentially part of the area of our budget around corporate staff where we've had to kind of realign those positions. So these were identified as part of the seniors housing unit moving into the integrated service model. So those positions are clearly identified in the 2023 budget, and we're already underway for hiring those now. And specifically to, you know, some of these recommendations and the costs of those and the impact on the 2023 budget, you know, that we have not taken a closer look at, you know, to this point in time. So I think it would be very prudent, you know, for us to that is in front of our you know, our thinking in our work, that as we move through these different recommendations and implementation, you know, is there a subsequent additional cost for us in 2023, and then certainly bringing it through this board or audit finance and audit to our board if we see how those costs could be impactful.
Right. Councillor?
Yeah, no, excellent. And, you know, they're great recommendations, and I gather at some point we're going to identify that there may be a need for some additional monies to be able to properly implement and sustain these recommendations moving forward. So.
Great. And I just have to say that I think over time, if we really actually adopt innovative approaches, it's partners coming to the table where it doesn't actually impact our budget. You know, the care coordinators from home and community are not actually in our budget. If we have good partnerships, Baycrest isn't charging us to come into the buildings, but it actually does to get, like, you know, the point is well taken, that to actually develop those partnerships takes experts on community engagement and community development and pulling it together. So perhaps actually, Tom, when we come back with a review more of the recommendations and, you know, how we're going to actually move forward with all of these reports so that we can actually keep a handle of it, we can also address any budget issues. Joseph, last comment?
Yeah, for sure. And I Councillor Crisanti, thank you for raising that question about, you know, the fiscal realities we're operating within. And I think something we've tried to do with the report is to identify or balance some of those longer term opportunities to recruit more staff with opportunities in the shorter or medium term that are less resource and time intensive to enhance some of those relationships between tenants and staff. So there are many ways that you can create better relationships. One of those ways is to reduce workloads and hire more staff, but there are other creative ways that we can work towards that outcome. So more opportunities to get to know each other through informal gatherings or formalizing monthly meetings at the building level where tenant reps can bring forward concerns to building level staff. And, you know, we recognize that a lot has been achieved with respect to staffing and tenant ratios. But our hope is that by implementing some of these ideas that we have in the shorter and medium term, that we won't have to have Tom, you know, break the bank and hire this whole huge new complement, but can instead, you know, build some of those incremental staffing increases where they are most needed into budget over longer periods of time, and work on some of those lower hanging fruit in the interim.
Makes sense. Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah,
You're
great
welcome.
work. Brenda? Oh, I think you're muted, Brenda.
Sorry. I just want to make sure that we don't get stuck on these process questions so much that we don't get movement. Okay? I'm sensitive to doing things properly and engaging people. I don't think it's the tenant's responsibility on this. This is our job to make sure the partners come to the table with the services they need to age in pace. And I don't want to say, you know, let's consult with them. We don't need to consult with them. We know they need this. We know clinically they need this. We know this reduces nursing home admissions. It's our job to negotiate those working relationships with partnerships so it delivers. And my bottom line is always, where the rubber hits the road, who's going to bathe me twice a week? Who's going to help cook my food and wipe my bum so I can stay and age in place? And it's as simple as that. And you build from there with other supplementary services. But we've got to get our partners to commit to giving those hours of service.
Great, thank you, Brenda. Your point is well made. And I think we've got some work to do. So I think we will commit, Fareed, also that this report and we'll come back to the board with some actionable next steps, because it was a lot to digest, and I think going out to the entire board. Councillor, is that a new hand or a legacy hand?
No, it's the same from before. I'll just take it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Your comments and input has been tremendous. So, is there any other final comments on this report? Again, you know, we've been very fortunate to have partners at the city, and it's really nice to actually see the response and to take this report. I know I had to read it a couple of times, and I think I'm going to have to read it a couple more times to actually digest everything. And that's but it's great. If there aren't any other items, so this one is also for information, so we're accepting it for information. You know, we will. I think I'll commit with my fellow board members and team members, staff team members, to make sure that we actually have some follow-up from this rich discussion at the board and at our next meeting, and decide whether we need to have an additional meeting to just make sure that we actually have kind of closed the loop on where we're moving next. But I think if there aren't any other items, we're right on time for a finish. And I just wanted to once again thank everybody for like a tremendous year of accomplishments, hard work, some challenges along the way, but we're here and we've done great. And I hope that everybody it doesn't feel like it's but January feels like it's going to come very quickly. So I hope everybody does actually have some time with family, friends, to wind down a little bit and get ready for the next year. Happy holidays for whatever holiday you're celebrating. I wish you all peace and joy. And thank you for contributing to a great meeting. So thank you all.
Best wishes, everyone.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Happy holidays.
Good heart.
Great job, Linda.
Take care, everyone.